The crystal dome over Zafir Prime did not look like a building. From far away, it looked like a frozen wave, a curve of light hanging over the capital like a second sky. From inside, it was a maze of thin bridges, floating platforms, and moving mirrors that caught starlight and poured it through the air like rain. Jace Aaron hated it. He was a mechanic, once a propulsion engineer in the Belt Navy, now a bond worker fixing things for the people who were about to kill his species. His left hand shook when he was tired, a souvenir from a reactor flash that had killed 3 friends and turned him into a man who flinched at sudden light. He was smart, patient, sometimes stubborn enough to make bad choices. He also had a talent for keeping machines alive with wire and willpower. Today his job badge said * ventilation and Atmos control ***. But the tool satchel at his hip carried something else, a coin-sized disc with a dull black surface. The disc could not talk to human space. It could not move a ship or fire a gun. All it could do was record what he heard and turn it into a burst of tight beam code that might, if the angles and luck were right, slip through the Zafirian interference nets and reach a listening post in the asteroid halo. It was a foolish plan. It was the only plan he had. Aaron clicked a voice behind him. "You are late." He turned. Kelry stood on the catwalk with her forearms folded and her antennae tucked tight, a Zafirian gesture that meant worry disguised as anger. She was tall as 2 men, her armor plates polished to a dull bronze, her long face lit by the cool glow from the vents. In the months he had worked here, she had saved him twice from inspections that would have found his recorder. He had saved her once from a plasma leak by throwing a valve with his bare hand and burning the skin to blisters. They did not say friend in words. They traded favors, tiny pieces of trust, and never spoke of it. "Shift schedules changed," Jay said. "Someone important is coming." Kelry's inner mandibles tapped together. "The War Council. Do not look up when they pass. Do not lift your head. If you move wrong in their air, they will smell it." He nodded and knelt by a panel. Fans hummed behind it, pushing cold air along capillaries cut through crystal. Jace opened the panel, changed nothing, and tried not to see what lay below the catwalk. The war table, a black ocean stretching across the heart of the dome, currently asleep and dark. When the generals arrived, it would wake with light and moving stars. A chime sounded. The dome dimmed. Guards swept in, 8-legged shapes with spines like spears. The council came behind them, Admiral Krexnoth's great serpent body sliding over the glass floor, General Morton, all armored fur and heavy claws, a chorus of crystalline officers Jace did not know by name. And at their center, General Vexathera, taller than the rest, more still than the rest, her faceted eyes drinking every wavelength at once. Jace kept his head down and his hands occupied. A real engineer could watch and still work. A bond worker lived longer by pretending not to see. The table woke. Black metal turned to stars. Red points rose like embers from a fire. They were human colonies, scattered across a dozen sectors, some little more than mining stations, others domes and tunnels on barren moons, and one, a bright red heart, labeled *Earth in a script he could not help reading. "Infestation," Vexathera said, voice like a hive. "They multiply." Hisses, chimes, low growls. Krexnoth's scales pulsed blue and then green in victory colors. 50 warships. Their spies brag about it. 50. His tone wrapped the number in contempt, like a parent mocking a child for saying a big word wrong. Jay slid the recorder from his sleeve to the open vent. He set it against the metal and pressed his palm to wake it. The disc warmed. A tiny light pulsed once and went dark, listening. "If we do not crush them now," Vexathera continued, "we will feed their children with the bones of our worlds later." Jace forced his breath to stay even. The panel hid his face. He stared at the screws and counted them like prayer beads. The air changed. A soft square of light appeared in the air above the table. The light sharpened into the face of a human woman with short black hair, a clean blue uniform, a small scar on her left cheek that Jace had seen in 100 briefings. Commander Sarah Chen ***. Not a legend, those were usually dead, but a story people told when they needed courage that did not look like rage. "Honored generals," she said in Zafirian trade speech, her voice careful and flat. "I speak for the colonies you are discussing. We want peace." The sound that followed was not laughter so much as a roomful of predators exhaling together. Krexnoth's long body coiled tighter. "No peace with infection." Chen's eyes did not move to him. "If you attack us, we will defend ourselves." Jace watched Kelry, not the council. Her antennae uncurled a fraction, the Zephyrian sign of surprise. In weeks of quiet talks stolen in machine rooms and corridors between shifts, she had told Jace what she believed about humans. We are reckless. We run toward fire. We say we want peace while building more guns. She had never said we were brave, not with that tone she used now, the one you save for a moon rising where no moon should be. General Vexathara stepped closer to the projection. And how will you defend, little mammal, with stones and sharp sticks, with ships built of scrap and glue? We will think, Chen said. We will fight where you cannot see us. We will not fight fair. The council truly laughed then. The table made it worse, amplifying and spreading the sound so it came from the floor and the ceiling and the air itself. Kelry's antennae folded. They enjoy cruelty, she murmured so softly only Jace heard it. War makes bad habits, Jace said. His throat felt dry. The connection flickered. Chen's face stuttered through static and came back. I hope you remember this. Underestimating us will hurt. Leave our sky, Krexnoth hissed. Prepare your graves. The link died. The dome went silent except for the low hum of air. Proceed, Vexathara said. The table brightened. Lines drew themselves between the blue icons of Zephyrian fleets, 300 warships. Their coarse arrows cut across the black like claws. They converged on the Sol system where Earth's small red heart waited with a few faint sparks. Beneath the plan, numbers scrolled, ship lists, fuel loads, landing cohorts, bombardment schedules. Jace's breath quickened. Numbers were his second language. He understood at a glance what they meant. The Armada could be 2 jumps from Earth in a week. The war plan was simple, and simple plans were the ones that usually worked. Smash their ships, burn their factories, break their planets. Once fear settled in, let it spread faster than any fleet could move. Vexathara spoke. First, formation, space denial. Second, orbital destruction. Third, surface pacification. The sequence is not new, it is only necessary. A crystal officer chimed like breaking glass. How much time do we permit for surrender? None, Vexathara said. No more games with the young. Krexnoth rippled his scales in approval. We make an example they will remember for 1,000 years. Jace's hand found the vent edge and gripped it until his knuckles hurt. 1,000 years. He pictured his mother on the colony of Ceres Ridge, sitting with aching feet at the kitchen table, pretending not to be tired when he was small. He pictured water tanks humming in the dark and a school built from cargo containers and a fight in a yard where he had broken a bully's nose and then cried because he had not wanted to. 1,000 years was longer than those things deserved to be forgotten. Kelry shifted, and the light from the table painted her armor in moving red arcs. Aaron, she whispered, do not look. He did not. He swallowed and thought about the duct map in his head. 2 turns to the left, 1 down, an access hatch that could be opened with a coin and a hope. A service shaft that smelled like cold iron and old oil. From there to the roof and the tight beam unit hidden in one of the star catchers. If he made it, if the angle lined up, he could aim the beam through a gap in the interference screens and send one burst out of the dome. He did not need to write a speech. 1 sentence would be enough. The council debated troop landing patterns. Jace watched the numbers change and wanted to peel his own skin off. The disc in the vent drank sound. He counted heartbeats and made himself breathe in and out, slow, like the doctors had taught him after the reactor flash. A minor alarm chimed. Every head turned except Jace's. A thin blue line pulsed in the air above the table. Incoming transmission, source unknown asterisk. Weapons lowered toward nothing. Guards raised spines, a shimmer of static, then a voice. Not words, not entries in the translation bank, just a low hum that made the air shake and the hair on Jace's arms rise. The noise lasted 3 seconds and stopped. Krexnoth coiled tighter. Trace it. Origin field within the dome, a sensor officer sang. Unclear path bouncing. Kelry's antennae snapped flat to her skull. She looked at Jace, not at the officer. She did not move. She did not accuse. She just looked, and in her eyes Jace saw something like the first moment a crack appears in a smooth wall. Lock the dome, Vexathara said. No one leaves. Jace's tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. He had not sent anything yet. The recorder was silent against the vent metal. That hum may be a fault in the dome's field, or maybe a probe from human space cutting through, blind and clumsy. Either way, it was danger with sound. Guards spread along the catwalks. One came toward Jace, slow and graceful, many-legged, sniffing the air and tasting molecules with a feathered tongue. Jace pressed his hands deep into the panel until it seemed like he might crawl into the machinery and become part of it. Identification, the guard hissed. Kelry stepped between them so smoothly it looked like dance. Bondworker Aaron, ventilation section, registered, inspection delayed by my order. The guard's eyes dilated, show order. Kelry lifted one arm and a faint pattern glowed along her inner forearm, the Zephyrian equivalent of a signed stamp. Her voice stayed flat. Do not waste council air with questions. The guard flicked its tongue once more, then turned away. Jace exhaled, then inhaled too much and had to cough into his sleeve. Kelry didn't look at him again. She kept her gaze on the guards and the council and her people's war plan. One of her hands, the lowest right, drifted to rest by her leg. Her claw brushed his tool satchel once. A whisper of touch. Go. He closed the panel, took up the satchel, and moved down the catwalk with the slow, bored pace of a worker late for his next appointment and not worried about it. He walked past 2 guards and through a maintenance arch and into a hallway where the crystal was dark and cool as a cave. When he turned the first corner, he ran. His boots were too loud. Crystal carried sound the way water carried light. He kept to the centers of slabs to avoid warning chimes. He found the hatch he needed, small, circular, meant for a species with more joints than his. He pried it up with a coin. The edge bit his palm. He ignored it. He dropped into the shaft and slid in the dark, hands and knees, left hand shaking, right hand finding grips. The shaft smelled like dust and cold breath. He reached the starcatcher on the roof, a blossom of mirrors that bent distant photons onto sensors deep in the dome. He crawled under one pedal and lay on his back with the sky close enough to drink. Zephyr Prime's nights were wide. 50 moons carved white wounds in the dark. The city below threw light up like a challenge. The desert beyond drank it down. Jace pulled a panel from the mirror's base and revealed a small alcove. In it, twisted wire and a box he had hidden over 3 shifts of stolen minutes. He took out the tight beam unit, a slab of ceramic with a hand-turned focus wheel. It looked like a toy. It was not. He placed the recorder disc into the unit's shallow cup. The disc stirred, woke, and made a whispering click. He aimed the beam through the narrow seam between the dome's interference plates. He knew the angle. He had measured it with a string and a mark on his nail. He had to hit a patch of cold sky where a human relay buoy slept like a pebble thrown too far. The focus wheel scraped against his skin. His left hand shook. He covered it with his right and held both still by will alone. Come on, he said, not sure if he meant the beam or the sky or himself. The unit hummed. A thin lance of invisible code stabbed upward, carrying the War Council's numbers and voices, the shape of the Armada, the timing of the first jumps, the cruelty built into the plan like a signature. It lasted half a second. It was all it needed. The unit cooled. Jace shut it down, pulled the disc, slid it into his sleeve, and listened to his own breathing. The city sounded wrong. He heard sirens from the lower levels, short, rising pulses like the cry of a broken instrument. He heard the rushed clatter of claws on crystal. He heard someone speaking through the dome skin speakers in a tone that could bend metal. He did not hear workers shouting to each other or music from the food courts or the soft buzz of market drones. The skin speaker voice reached the roof. Intrusion, signal, lockdown. Cold ran along Jace's spine. He twisted in place and started to crawl back into the shaft and froze. Kelry stood in the hatch, blocking it with the curve of her body. Her eyes were wide open, taking all the starlight they could. She had climbed the service way as fast as he had, maybe faster. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. I needed to send it, Jace said. If I didn't. I know, she said. He blinked. He had expected anger. He had not expected her voice to sound like someone learning a thing about themselves and not liking parts of it. They will search, she said. They will find the scratch on the panel, your scent in the vent. They will follow the angle you used and measure the gap and count the minutes, and then they will count you asterisk. Do you understand? He nodded. His mouth felt full of sand. Then you will come with me, Kelry said. He stared. To what, a cell? Not a cell, her antennae flicked. Something worse, something better, a way not to die today. She stepped aside from the hatch and pointed down into the dark. Move, Jace Aaron. You do not have many heartbeats to choose. He crawled past her. His satchel knocked against the hatch ring with a sound as loud as a shot. Kelry flinched but did not stop him. She dropped into the shaft behind him and sealed the hatch with a smooth, practiced twist of her lowest left hand. In the dark, she breathed once, slow. "You are certain your message reached your people?" "No," he said. "I am certain I had to try." Kelry's claws clicked softly. "Then it is time you see the part of this dome that does not belong to my people." "What does that mean?" "It means," Kelry said, "that the Great Armada launches in 72 hours, and there is a secret buried under our feet that even General Vexathara does not know." Jay stopped crawling. "What secret?" Kelry's mandibles moved once, a gesture he had learned to read as fear. "The thing your commander spoke of, the thing she said would hurt us if we laughed." A thunder of feet echoed through the shaft behind them. "Guards, close." Kelry pushed him forward. "Move." They slid deeper into the dome's belly, into a tunnel that even the maps in Jace's head did not hold. While above them, the war table drew lines toward Earth, and 1,000 ships warmed their engines. And below them, in the dark, something hummed like a sleeping storm. The crawl space grew narrower as Jace followed Kelry down the spine of the dome. Dust stung his nose, and the metal under his palms vibrated with a low, steady pulse. This was no ordinary ventilation line. Somewhere deep below, a massive machine lived, its heartbeat faint but steady. He whispered, "Where are we going?" Kelry didn't answer at first. Her long body moved with unsettling silence, claws hooking into seams, antennae brushing ahead like searching fingers. At last, she spoke in a voice so soft it barely carried in the tunnel. "To the vault. It was built before my time, before my mother's time. Most of my kind think it is nothing more than an energy stabilizer. They never ask what it feeds." Jace frowned, sweat running down his temple. "And what does it feed?" Her mandibles flexed uneasily. "Something that is not supposed to exist." "The hidden chamber." The shaft ended in a round hatch sealed with crystal veins. Kelry pressed 2 claws against a patch of wall. Her plates shimmered with faint blue light, and the veins retreated like liquid glass. The hatch sighed open. Jace dropped through after her and landed on metal instead of crystal. The chamber beyond was huge and dark, lit only by pale beams flickering across a central sphere. The sphere was the size of a transport shuttle, hovering inches above the ground without support. Its surface shimmered like liquid silver caught mid-ripple, folding in and out of itself. The sight made Jace's head ache. His vision tried to make sense of the impossible shapes, and his stomach lurched as if he'd stepped off a cliff. What is that?" Kelry's antennae twitched back in unease. "We call it the Veil Core. My people found it buried on a dead moon long before we made war. It is not ours. It is older than any Zephyrian records." Jace walked slowly around it, fighting the vertigo. The sphere seemed to twist when he didn't look directly at it, as if shifting between realities. "You're telling me you've had this under your feet for centuries, and you've just been ignoring it." "Not ignoring." Kelry's voice carried a bitter edge. "Using it, harnessing fragments of its power for our shields, our long-range sensors, but we do not understand it. We do not want to. General Vexathara believes knowledge makes us soft. She says obedience and numbers are enough to rule the stars." Jace pressed his palm against the air near the sphere. The fine hairs on his arm rose. He felt something, like being watched by the fabric of the universe itself. Kelry turned toward him. "Do you understand why I brought you here, human?" "Not yet." "You are reckless," she said. "Your kind digs in ruins that kill others. You touch fire and then build with it. You are not afraid of change. That makes you dangerous." Jace let out a dry laugh. "Dangerous? My people are about to be erased in 3 days. That doesn't sound dangerous to me." Kelry's mandibles clicked once. "Unless you know how to use this." "The secret weapon." For hours, Kelry showed him fragments. Ancient scripts her people had copied but never read, patterns of energy carved into the walls around the sphere, and faded diagrams that seemed half machine, half equation. Jace recorded everything he could with his sleeve disc. Slowly, a picture formed. The sphere was not a weapon in itself. It was a doorway. Not one that opened to somewhere else, but one that folded reality in such a way that somewhere else became here for an instant. A ship caught in the fold would not burn or shatter. It would vanish. Jace's pulse thundered. This is Project Mirage." Kelry tilted her head. "What is that?" "It's what Chen hinted at. Our scientists have been working on something similar, quantum displacement mines. Small, fragile, built by hands that barely understand the math. But this," he gestured at the sphere, "this is the source. This is the engine behind it all. Kelry's eyes glowed faintly as they caught the light of the sphere. Then your commander was not bluffing. She meant it when she said you could hurt us. Jace laughed bitterly. She didn't just mean it. She's counting on it. But we didn't know the Zephyrians already had one sitting under their capital. If your generals realized what this thing really does, they would erase it, Kelry said sharply. Erase me for bringing you here. Our empire survives because we believe in force, not secrets we do not control. Her voice grew quieter, almost trembling. But I have watched you humans. I have seen you fight machines that should not fly, fix reactors with broken hands, hold onto life when logic says you should surrender. If anyone can wield this monster without becoming it, it is you. The choice. Jace looked at her, then at the sphere again. The weight of it pressed into his chest. He had seen too many weapons up close, fusion cannons, spinal accelerators, nuclear torpedoes. They all work the same way, burn hotter, hit harder. This was different. This was unfair. He whispered, "You know what will happen if we use it." Kelry's mandibles parted slightly. "Your enemies will vanish." "No," Jace said, his voice shook. "Wars will change forever. No fleet will matter. No defense will hold. Anyone who has this wins without firing a shot, and everyone else spends eternity afraid." For the first time since he had met her, Kelry looked away. Perhaps fear is the only peace we will ever have. The silence stretched between them. Jace felt the recorder disc in his sleeve, still warm. If he could get this knowledge back to Chen, humanity could trigger the mines at the perfect moment. The Great Armada would march into a trap and never march out. But at what cost? He thought of Earth, the oceans he had never seen but dreamed of, the families who believed the Navy could hold the stars, the children on colony worlds who still built kites out of wire and cloth because they thought the future was theirs. If the Zephyrians won, all of that ended. If humanity won with this, maybe something else ended too. Kelry stepped closer. Her antennae brushed the air near his shoulder, a gesture almost like comfort. "You must decide, Jace Aaron. Do you give your people the power to erase an armada, or do you let them burn to preserve your conscience?" Before he could answer, the chamber shook. The air split with alarms. Harsh Zephyrian tones rattled the crystal walls. Footsteps thundered above, hundreds of claws on stone. The vault door blazed with light. Guards had found them. Kelry spun toward him, eyes blazing. "Choose later, live now." She dragged him toward a narrow shaft cut into the wall, barely wide enough for a human to squeeze through. Behind them, the Veil core pulsed brighter, as if it too had sensed the approaching storm. The shaft spat Jace and Kelry into a sublevel beneath the dome. They landed hard on steel grates that smelled of old oil and damp stone. Sirens echoed above them, red light bleeding down through narrow vents like veins. Kelry's antennae flicked frantically. "They will seal the city. Every exit will lock. We must reach the river tunnels." Jace's chest heaved. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped his satchel. "River tunnels? Kelry, if they're sealing the city, how are we supposed to reach anything?" Her mandibles clicked. "By moving before the locks finish." They sprinted through the maintenance corridors, claws and boots pounding in mismatched rhythm. Jace fought the weight of his thoughts as hard as he fought his lungs for air. The sphere, the Veil core, if we can harness it, if Project Mirage works, 300 alien warships could vanish without a shot. But the same thought whispered like poison, and then what? What happens after? The Great Armada prepares. Far above them, in orbit over Zephyr Prime, 300 ships of the Armada finished their final checks. The Eternal Dominion, Krexnoth's flagship, hung in space like a continent torn from a world. 15 miles long, bristling with weapons, crewed by 20,000 warriors. Around it, the other vessels formed a perfect lattice, cruisers, dreadnoughts, destroyers, each one a world killer in its own right. "Report," Krexnoth hissed, his coils wrapped around the command throne. "All formations ready, Admiral," his tactical officer responded, multiple optical sensors whirring. "Shields stable, weapon cores charged, jump coordinates locked, at your command." Krexnoth's scales rippled a victorious green. "Then let history write this day as the end of the human infestation. Engage." Engines roared in silent unity. Reality twisted. The Great Armada folded into hyperspace like a spear vanishing into a wound. The human fleet. Light years away, in the Sol system, Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance. Her captains' faces filled the central display, each one haggard but unyielding. Rodriguez of the Resilience offered a tired grin. Singh of the Courage folded her hands in front of her and bowed her head slightly. Williams of the Determination stared grimly into the camera. Chen's voice was steady. "This is it. 47 of us will go forward. We will fight and bleed, and yes, we will die. But every death will buy time for the mines. Every second we hold them in place brings us closer to victory." Her throat tightened, but she forced herself onward. "Remember why you volunteered, not for medals, not for glory, for Earth, for the colonies, for the children who deserve a tomorrow." A murmur of assent echoed through the captains. Rodriguez gave a two-fingered salute. "Then let's show them what human stubbornness really means." Chen ended the conference. She turned to Dr. Blackwood, who hovered near the science console. The woman's eyes were wild, sleepless. "Are the displacement fields stable?" "They're stable," Blackwood said. "Thousands seeded through the system, invisible until triggered. Then it begins. The first contact. The great Armada tore out of hyperspace into the Sol system. To the Zafirians, it looked like victory already won. 300 ships formed into hunting squadrons, spreading like steel vultures across the system. "Enemy vessels detected," a sensor officer called. On the tactical display, red dots flickered. Human ships, scattered and weak, huddled behind asteroids and moons. Krexnoth bared his fangs. "Exactly as expected, begin the hunt, no survivors." Squadron 7 swooped down on 5 human ships. The Valiant, fearless, brave, bold, and honor. The Valiant fired first, launching a hypervelocity slug. It splashed harmlessly against an alien shield. The aliens laughed. Primitive, their leader sneered, "End them." Plasma beams cut space into rivers of light. The Honor melted in seconds. The Fearless fired 30 missiles. Automated defenses shredded them. The ship exploded moments later. One by one, the human vessels fell. The Brave rammed an alien cruiser in a last act of fury, but barely scratched its shields. The Bold managed to fry an enemy sensor before vanishing in a ball of fire. The Valiant fought for 10 long minutes, then died in nuclear light. Reports poured into Krexnoth's bridge, human vessels destroyed, human fleet collapsing, no resistance worthy of note. The Zafirians jeered. Victory was certain. The disappearances begin. Then something impossible happened. The Stellar Fury, a dreadnought in the 3rd formation, simply vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, no radiation. One moment 8,000 crew celebrated their easy triumph, the next moment they were gone. "Admiral," the tactical officer said, alarm spiking in its voice. "The Fury is no longer present." "Check your sensors." Krexnoth's scales turned pale yellow. "Nothing vanishes, nothing." "No debris, no energy signature," the officer insisted. "The ship has ceased to exist." Before Krexnoth could respond, 3 more ships vanished. The cruiser Void Hunter, the destroyer Swift Death, the battleship Iron Talon, all gone. On every screen, blue dots winked out. Crews that had conquered worlds now disappeared mid-breath, mid-sentence, mid-laugh. Panic rippled through the fleet. General Vexathara's voice hissed across the network. 7 ships gone from my formation. What is happening?" Krexnoth gripped his throne so hard his scales cracked. "All ships hold formation. Begin deep sensor sweeps. Find the source." But there was nothing to find. More ships vanished. Squadrons of proud warships winked out like sparks in the wind. In the void, Zafirian arrogance shattered. The great Armada, invincible for centuries, was being unmade by an enemy it could not see, hear, or touch. The human perspective. On the Defiance, Chen stood rigid, hands clasped behind her back. "All captains report mines activating," Torres said at comms. "Enemy ships are vanishing across all sectors." Chen exhaled slowly, her chest tight with grief and relief. On the display, her fleet's sacrificial 47 burned one after another. Yet in their deaths, the trap was sprung. Dr. Blackwood whispered almost to herself, "It works, dear God, it works." Chen's gaze hardened. "Then may every disappearance carry their names." The Eternal Dominion trembled with panic. The command chamber, usually quiet as a cathedral, now filled with overlapping voices. Officers screeching, crystalline voices chiming in terror, sensor creatures flooding the air with contradictory reports. "Ships do not simply vanish," Admiral Krexnoth roared, his scales flashing blood red. His coils lashed across the command deck, sending sparks from the metal floor. Find the cause. But already another squadron winked out. 12 warships, the Iron Fangs, veterans of 17 campaigns, disappeared in less than 30 seconds. The tactical display shed blue dots like falling rain. General Vexathara's voice cut across the chaos, ragged and furious. Admiral, we are trapped in something we do not understand. Every formation is breaking. This is no battle. It is slaughter. Krexnoth spat venom, though his insides churned with dread. It is trickery, primitive tricks they cannot. The feed crackled and died. Vexathara's face froze mid-snarling command and dissolved into static. Her flagship was gone. For the first time in his centuries of war, Krexnoth had no orders to give. He could only stare as the galaxy's strongest fleet dissolved around him like dust in a storm. The human trap. In the Sol system, the Defiance's bridge pulsed with red emergency lights. 47 human ships had been reduced to flaming wreckage. Their crews were gone, their hulls torn apart. But Chen stood unflinching at the center chair, her jaw set, her dark eyes locked on the tactical map. Lieutenant Tor's voice shook with disbelief. Enemy losses, 160 confirmed, 210. Admiral, they're vanishing faster than we predicted. Chen didn't move. Hold our positions, do not reveal ourselves. The longer they believe this is invisible space, the stronger the panic. Dr. Blackwood hovered at her console, muttering as her fingers danced over calculations. The displacement fields are chaining. One ship activates a mine, the ripple catches others. It's multiplying. They're tangled in their own formations. Good, Chen said. The word felt like a blade in her mouth. Every vanishing ship meant thousands of lives ripped into the unknown. Yet without this horror, Earth and its children would already be ash. Captain Rodriguez's voice burst over the comms, weary but fierce. This is the Resilience, reporting from Asteroid Belt Sector 9. Alien forces are scattering like headless cattle. They've lost discipline. Permission to strike stragglers. Chen's knuckles whitened on the chair's arm. Her instinct screamed to stay hidden. But the chance was there, crippled cruisers, isolated destroyers, ships distracted by fear. Permission granted, she said. Strike fast, hit vanish, let them believe the void itself is hunting them. Prey with teeth. The Resilience broke cover, engines flaring from behind an asteroid field. Rodriguez's gunners unleashed every missile they had left. 3 Zephyrian frigates, already panicked by ships vanishing nearby, scrambled their defenses too late. Explosions ripped their shields apart. One frigate split down the middle, spilling atmosphere like silver blood. Another spiraled helplessly into the asteroid belt, colliding with stone until it shattered. Rodriguez barked into his comms, sweat dripping into his beard. That's for the valiant, that's for the bold, keep firing. Then he cut engines, swinging the ship back into hiding. The asteroids swallowed them whole. By the time the enemy realized what had happened, the Resilience was gone. Other survivors followed suit. The Courage darted out of a debris cloud, firing rail slugs point-blank into the belly of a battleship before retreating into the mist. The Determination lured a cruiser into a displacement field, watching in silence as the massive alien vessel blinked out of reality mid-pursuit. For the first time in the war, humanity wasn't running. They were biting. The Armada breaks. Panic spread through the Zephyrian ranks like infection. On the Dominion, Krexnoth's scales dimmed to the gray of fear. Retreat, he hissed, the word tasting like ash. All ships retreat to hyperspace. But retreat was no escape. Ships that tried to flee toward jump points vanished even faster. One dreadnought disappeared mid-jump sequence, leaving only a shimmer of distortion in its place. Another disintegrated into nothing before its jump drive could charge. They have sealed the system, cried Zardoz, commander of the crystalline fleets. His voice cracked like breaking glass. Every road home is gone. Krexnoth coiled tighter, strangled by disbelief. One species cannot do this, not with scraps and fire. His tactical officer whispered, Admiral, perhaps they are not fighting with ships at all. Perhaps they are fighting with reality. Krexnoth felt something cold slither down his spine. On the Defiance, Chen watched the display as alien ships vanished in clusters. Entire wings disappeared, sometimes 30 at a time. Enemy count, she asked. Tors swallowed hard. Less than 80 remain. The bridge went quiet. Only hours ago, 300 warships had filled the stars. Now, barely a quarter survived. Dr. Blackwood's voice was hollow. We've changed the nature of war. They don't even know what they're fighting. Chen looked at the faces of her crew, exhausted, terrified, and yet there was fire in their eyes. For the first time in living memory, humanity was not prey. Signal the fleet, Chen said. Let them know. Tonight the galaxy learns that humans bite back. The Eternal Dominion was no longer a warship. It was a tomb waiting to be sealed. Admiral Krexnoth's command deck shuddered as the void around them screamed with vanishing ships. Once, the Dominion's bridge had been a temple to confidence, scales glowing green in victory hues, officers boasting of inevitable conquest. Now every scale in the chamber was pale and dull. Warriors who had laughed at human resistance now whispered like frightened hatchlings. Admiral, the tactical officer rasped, its many eyes swiveling in despair. 275 ships gone, 25 remain. The number struck harder than a rail slug. From 300 to 25, from millions of soldiers to a scattering of survivors, an empire's invincible hammer reduced to sand. General Morton's voice crackled through what little of the fleet net still remained. The bear-like commander's breathing was heavy, ragged. Admiral, this is no battle. This is extinction. We must surrender or we will be erased. Krexnoth hissed, coils nodding with rage. Surrender, to vermin, to apes who hurl rocks through space. His words rang hollow. Even as he spat them, two more blue icons blinked out on the tactical display. The Dominion's crew watched their admiral's scales shift sickly white. He had no answer. Humanity holds the knife. On the UES Defiance, Commander Sarah Chen stood over her officers like a shadow carved in iron. Lieutenant Tor's voice was hushed. Admiral, the Armada is broken, survivors clustering near Dominion, no counterattack attempted, they're paralyzed. Dr. Blackwood's pale hands gripped the science console, knuckles bone-white. They know they can't fight. The mines are still chaining across the system. Every move they make risks erasure. Chen nodded. The tactical display showed clusters of red, her surviving 3 ships, hidden in asteroid shadows. The display also showed the dwindling blue specks of the Armada, each one trembling like prey animals trying not to breathe. They're not the predators anymore, she whispered. Now they're trapped in our web. Rodriguez's battered voice came over the comms. Commander, permission to hail them. Chen's eyes narrowed. What would you say? That we don't just kill, that we choose. After a pause, Chen gave a slow nod. Open channel. The conversation. The face of Captain Rodriguez filled the Zephyrian fleet's main comm screens. His hair was gray, his uniform torn, his eyes weary but alive. This is Captain Rodriguez of the UES Resilience, he said, his voice calm. You are speaking to the fleet you thought destroyed. Admiral Krexnoth hissed, Lies, we watched your ships burn. Rodriguez's mouth twitched into a humorless smile. You watched volunteers die so you would believe you'd won, but you never fought the real fleet. You walked into a minefield seeded for you months ago, and now your Armada vanishes piece by piece. The Dominion's bridge fell silent. Even Krexnoth's officers stared at the human image with something close to awe. Rodriguez's voice hardened. We sacrificed 47 ships, thousands of lives, and will sacrifice more if that's what it takes, because we'd rather die free than live conquered. Krexnoth's scales rippled black, the Zephyrian color of humiliation. You baited us, you tricked us like animals. No, Rodriguez said, we taught you. The prey you mocked had teeth all along. The final spiral. On the Dominion, panic spiraled out of control. Escape pods launched against Krexnoth's orders. Some captains fled into hyperspace routes and were swallowed instantly, their ships erased by waiting mines. Others clustered tighter to the Dominion, trembling as if proximity could protect them. Zardoc, the crystalline commander, flickered onto the comms. His once proud voice cracked like glass under pressure. Admiral, we must negotiate. Every minute we hesitate, more vanish. They will not stop until we are all gone. Before Krexnoth could respond, another 3 ships blinked out. The survivors wailed in terror. The bridge lights dimmed as systems rerouted power to stabilizers fighting distortions in space itself. Krexnoth slammed his coils against the deck. No surrender, he shrieked, but the words sounded hollow even to him. Humanity speaks. On the Defiance, Chen's screen lit up with an incoming transmission from the Zephyrians. Admiral Krexnoth appeared, his coils drawn tight, his scales dull and cracked. His voice rasped. "Human, what do you want?" Chen leaned forward in her chair, her expression steady, almost sad. "We want you to remember that arrogance has a price. Remember that we defended ourselves just as we said we would. And remember that the age of conquest through brute force is over." Krexnoth's jaw tightened. "And our missing ships, our crews?" "They live," Chen said, "trapped in dimensional pockets where time moves differently. They may experience minutes while centuries pass for us, or centuries while we live a day. They're not destroyed, Admiral, but they will never return unless we choose to bring them back." The words struck harder than plasma fire. Every surviving Zephyrian officer realized the truth. Humanity hadn't just defeated their armada. They had taken their people hostage in a prison beyond understanding. The news spread like fire across the stars. A week earlier, the Zephyrian Armada had been the unbreakable hammer of empire. 300 ships, each larger than cities, each armed with weapons that cracked moons. Now fewer than 20 limped through the void, their crews hollow-eyed, their commanders disgraced. No one in the galaxy could ignore it. The empire that had ruled through fear had been undone not by a rival juggernaut, not by equal power, but by humans, the youngest species at the Council's edge, dismissed as reckless children with toys. The survivors return. Admiral Krexnoth's eternal dominion staggered back into Zephyrian space with 17 ships clinging to its shadow. Half of those were crippled, engines bleeding plasma, hulls scarred from their own panicked collisions. Millions of soldiers had marched out. Barely 100,000 returned. On the docking platforms, families waited expecting triumph. Instead, they saw shame. Krexnoth slithered down his command ramp, scales dulled to ash gray. His rivals in the high command watched with silent horror. The stories had already outrun him. Ships vanishing into nothing, generals erased mid-sentence, the mighty Vexithara herself gone without a trace. A chorus of voices demanded answers. Krexnoth gave none. He had only one truth to speak. The humans had ended the age of conquest. The Galactic Council. 6 months later, the crystal amphitheater opened its great petals to the stars. Suspended in orbit above a neutral sun, the council chamber was older than most empires, built from translucent crystal that bent light into rivers of color. Delegates from 43 species filled the curved tiers, serpentine, insectoid, crystalline, and forms that defied easy description. They had come to witness something no one had expected, a human standing at the podium. Commander Sarah Chen wore her simple blue uniform. No medals, no decoration, no weapons. Only calm eyes that had stared into extinction and not blinked. 6 months ago, she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber, many of you had never heard of us. Some of you had already begun plans to carve our colonies apart. We were small, primitive, unworthy of respect. Murmurs rippled through the tiers, some defensive, some ashamed, some openly hostile. Chen did not flinch. And yet, she continued, we survived. Not with bigger guns, not with stronger shields. We survived because we chose to think differently. We built a weapon not from fire, but from the fabric of reality itself. We used it only to defend ourselves, and now the galaxy must decide what comes next. The fear. A delegate of the vegan Warklands rose, his crystalline form glimmering sharp as knives. His voice cracked like breaking stone. You threaten us, human. You hold a weapon that could erase any fleet in existence. Why should we not destroy you now before you spread? Chen met his gaze. Because we've already proven we don't want to destroy you. We could have erased every Zephyrian ship. Instead, we left survivors to tell the story. We could have turned this weapon on every rival species at once. Instead, we're offering to share our knowledge, to help build defenses so no one can use displacement as a weapon again. Gasps filled the chamber. To give away the secrets of the most powerful weapon ever made, this was either madness or something greater. The offer. Chen pressed a control. A hologram flared above the podium, showing a star map dotted with glowing spheres. Each sphere contained a displaced Zephyrian warship, trapped in the folds of quantum distortion. These ships are alive, she said. Their crews breathe, their hearts beat, but they are out of reach, caught in a space where time moves differently. Bringing them back will require knowledge none of us possess alone. If we work together, Zephyrian sensors, Centurion biology, Correlaxian engineering, vegan energy mastery, we may retrieve them, not for vengeance, for life. The chamber fell silent. Generals who had once mocked humanity now realized she was offering a choice, cooperation or extinction. The reactions. Ambassador Thevar of the Correlaxian Empire, his carapace scarred from Zephyrian conquest, raised a claw. Why should we help our conquerors? Why should we save those who enslaved us? Chen's voice softened. Because if displacement can trap them, it can trap anyone. Next time it could be your ships, your children. If we don't build a defense together, no one will be safe. A murmur spread again, this time not of fear, but of recognition. Fleet Commander Zartok, one of the few Zephyrian survivors, rose slowly. His crystalline body refracted the amphitheater's light into fractured rainbows. His voice carried bitterness, but also respect. Human, if the Council agrees, will you help bring our lost crews back? Chen nodded without hesitation. Yes, every ship, Zephyrian, Correlaxian, anyone trapped in these fields, we will not leave them behind. The turning. For hours the Council debated, voices rising, old grudges flaring. But for the first time in living memory, conquest was not the strongest argument in the chamber. When the vote came, 38 species signed the Galactic Cooperation Accord. They pledged shared research, joint defense, and negotiation before war. Not perfect peace, not instant trust, but the first step toward something new. Chancellor High of the Centurions announced, his golden leaves shimmering green. Let the galaxy record this day. The age of conquest ends. The age of cooperation begins. The days after the accord felt like a new dawn. For the first time in galactic memory, war fleets powered down instead of powering up. Engineers from rival empires shared tables instead of trenches. Laboratories hummed not with secret weapons programs, but with cross-species teams arguing over equations and laughing at one another's mistakes. In orbit over Earth, a new station began to rise. Not purely human, not purely alien, but a joint construction where Correlaxian engineers and Centurion biologists worked alongside human mechanics who still wore scars on their hands. The project was simple in name, impossible in ambition. The first cooperative defense hub. Its goal was to develop a shield that could resist quantum displacement itself. Chen watched the framework grow from the Defiance's observation deck. A lattice of steel and crystal glittered against the curve of Earth, fragile-looking yet filled with the promise of something greater. For once, she allowed herself to smile. Old enemies, new bonds. Kelry stood beside her, armored plates polished but antennae lowered in humility. She had abandoned her rank in the Zephyrian fleet when she chose to shelter Jace Aaron, when she revealed the Veil core beneath the dome. Now officially, she was an observer. In truth, she was more. Bridge, translator, reminder of how thin the line was between enemy and ally. Jace leaned against the railing, his burned hand wrapped in fresh bandages. He had carried the secrets of the Veil core through fire and pursuit, and now watched as scientists tested replicas of displacement fields under controlled conditions. He still shook when he remembered the hum of the sphere, the impossible shimmer of its surface. But he shook less when Kelry stood near. You realize, Jace said quietly, this piece is balanced on a knife. One spark and it all falls apart. Chen nodded. That's always been true. The difference is now we know it, now we choose anyway. Kelry's antennae brushed the air in a gesture humans had learned meant agreement. Fear alone never built empires. Perhaps cooperation can. The weight of sacrifice. Still, peace did not erase grief. Chen often found herself alone at night, reviewing the names of the 47 captains who had volunteered to die. Rodriguez, Singh, Williams, all gone, their ships sacrificed so the mines could trigger. Their faces haunted her as much as the victory did. She recorded a message to their families. Not the official one, full of honor and triumph, but a personal truth. That she had seen their bravery, that humanity lived because of them, that she would carry their names like scars. Sometimes she dreamed of the displaced Zephyrian crews, trapped in alien pockets of time, staring into eternities they could not escape. She woke sweating, whispering, "What have we done?" The council reconvenes. Months later, the Galactic Council met again. This time, humans were not guests. They were recognized members with a seat carved into the crystal tiers. The emblem of Earth, a simple circle of blue and green, shone beside banners of powers centuries older. Chen stood once more at the podium. We are here not as conquerors, not as victims, she said, but as equals. Let the story of the Armada remind us all, arrogance breeds ruin, but trust, even fragile, can remake the stars. The hall echoed with murmurs. Some were skeptical, others hopeful. For the first time, no one laughed. Shadows beyond the stars. But beyond the celebrations, whispers grew louder. Zardok's words had been no empty warning. Scouts returned with images of structures vast enough to eclipse suns, rings the size of solar systems, machines humming with energies that defied physics. No crew that ventured too close returned unchanged. Blackwood's analysis chilled the room when she showed it to Chen. These constructs are not ruins. Their fields are active. Something still watches them. Chen stared at the data, her stomach cold. The Accord had united 43 species. Against what was coming, it might not be enough. Humanity's place. On the Defiance, Jace watched Earth's curves spin beneath them, clouds drifting like soft armor over blue seas. Kelry stood beside him, silent, her alien eyes reflecting the same sky. "You humans," she said at last, "you were never prey, you were seeds, small, fragile, but carrying fire inside. Now the galaxy burns differently because of you." Jace exhaled. His hand still trembled, but when he reached for the railing, Kelry steadied it with one clawed hand. "Then we'd better make sure," he said, "that fire doesn't consume everything." The new age. The galaxy was changed forever. The Zephyrian Empire, once unchallenged, now bent its head in reluctant humility. Worlds that had lived in fear of conquest raised their banners again. And humanity, once dismissed as reckless children, now stood among giants as equals, because they had forced the galaxy to see them. But in the void beyond charted stars, vast shadows stirred. The Great Armada had vanished, but it was not the last Armada the galaxy would face. Chen stood at her command post, earthlight shining across her uniform. "We survived the Armada," she said softly to herself. "Now we prepare for what comes next." The stars outside seemed to shiver in answer. And so began a new age, not of conquest, not yet of peace, but of humanity's place among the stars, earned in blood, sacrifice, and the terrible knowledge that even prey can bite back.